What up times three? It's Serious V, Vaughn the Serious Star, the self-help sensei, coming to you live from the airwaves, back like I never left. Hopefully everybody doing good today. It's a nice warm day outside, you know what I'm saying? Get out, do some exercise, you know what I mean? Do you, chill, whatever it is that you do, you know what I'm saying? Don't let nobody or nothing stop you. Alright, so today is a what if episode 2. I'm gonna keep on dropping these joints, you know what I'm saying? And the topic of episode 2 is housing. I had a couple talking points, you know how I do it, I always come up with a couple talking points real quick to discuss. Now, the first talking point about housing in this what if series, in this what if episode 2, is a efficient way of building houses, which is called earthships. I'm not sure if anybody is familiar with what an earthship is. An earthship is something that's used to house individuals, and the construction materials are recyclables. Now, if you wanted to look a little more in depth into what earthships is, you can look up what is called earthships and Michael Reynolds. I believe he builds earthships. When I came across him, he was building earthships in like South America, in the South America area, and all the construction was like energy sufficient. It was environmentally friendly because it was, using recyclables and things that we throw away after we don't need them. Or just create more things out of that, and then keeps selling it real quick and using it real quick instead of just utilizing that material for something long term. You know what I'm saying? Because we got a lot of recyclables we recycle every day. Now, like I said, if you wanted to look up what earthships is and more in depth, look into Michael Reynolds and earthships. Now, the second talking point I wanted to talk about was utilizing unconventional spaces on the planet. Now, we all know that we got a lot of space on the planet that we use for things that we might not necessarily need, or can be used for more than those one types of locations. Now, we see, for example, we see multi-use buildings. You might see on the lower levels, there's stores and things like that, retail stores, and then, you know what I'm saying, up on above that, you'll see housing structures, apartments and things like that. Now, even within these types of spaces, it might be land on the other side somewhere that's just used or waiting for somebody to buy it for some retail space or something like that. And that's just a little example. Whereas though that land could be used for a specific types of housing structures that can actually help house individuals that might actually necessarily need housing structures to provide for them and their families and things like that. And then again, that's more structures pretty much that individuals could actually live in. Now, and that the homelessness and things like that, that's a whole topic and video in itself. I just wanted to touch a little bit upon stuff like that. Now, another part about in unconventional spaces is we got a lot of space on the planet that we don't necessarily use, and if we did use it in a energy sufficient, bio-friendly, environmental friendly way, we could provide different types of housing structures and more housing structures for individuals who on the planet, pretty much. Because, for example, in apartment buildings, we all get cramped up into these boxes and things like that. You feel what I'm saying? It's every housing structure, 9 times out of 10, if it's in areas that's not, big giant houses and things like that, we looking at apartments and houses and stuff like that. Currently right now I'm in an apartment. And and this is like a residential, like house type of structure. Now, as far as the other types of locations, pretty much, we got air that we don't use. We could actually, there's like buildings and things like that that's constructed really high up for these types of like things, like residential spaces and apartments and stuff like that. Now, what if that was more of a thing, like a thing going up, more types of buildings that's taller in general, that could actually provide more space in that one structure for housing and things like that, especially if it was a environmental friendly type of situation, or having the technology to provide housing that actually sits in the air itself. We can provide air, then we got water. Water is a way that we can provide housing. It's not necessarily tapped into using water as more of a residential space versus, just like the ocean and things like that, because the ocean is a big, giant, a large percentage of the earth pretty much is the ocean. So imagine more residential spaces that's environmental friendly and things like that. Now, I know it comes to mind like, oh, humans would mess up the oceans and stuff like that. Now again, that stuff like that is a whole nother video in its own self. That's going into how we live and like what we do as humans and stuff like that, how we consume and everything like that. That goes into those topics. Now, another talking point that I had, which goes with how to build better and more efficient types of structures, is clean energy. So if we started tapping into different types of housing structures, not only do we have earthships, they have tiny homes. You can build tiny home earthships. You can build tiny homes. They got tiny home storage units. I know Tesla has tiny homes. I'm pretty sure there's multiple other different companies that have these things. The talking points that I'm talking about is using more of a financial, more of a easy financial way to build and have a sufficient energy use to build houses versus anything whereas though you would have to pay large, gigantic amounts of money to have these housing structures. And not only that, it's a firm belief in me that we as human beings should be able to build housing structures ourselves. As far as learning that as growing up, that should be a part of growing up. That's just one of my personal viewpoints on it. So going back into clean energy, we got one thing that we don't tap into that is always available is the sun. So that goes with solar energy. Like, imagine if the planet was more of a percentage of solar, like 50, 65, 70% solar. And I'm just throwing numbers out there. I'm not saying I researched and or know the exact percentage of the planet that could actually go solar. I'm just throwing those numbers out there. But the sun is always available. So imagine structures that have solar panels. Like two types of solar panels that I know about is the mono and poly. And that mono and polycrystalline. And that's the two main types that I know about, that I've researched and came across and studied about. Now, imagine if houses housing structures that's built off of recyclable types of materials had solar and was running fully, completely off solar, you would pretty much be in charge of your own energy use, and your own energy consumption, because you would having a specific amount of energy that you need for your daily and nightly use, pretty much. And that's something that human beings could, in a what if mindset, learning in the generation after generation after generation after generation, learning how pretty much to produce these things ourselves, and learning how to use these things ourselves as individual families and things like that. Whereas though you and your family can be in charge of, okay, my energy needs is met because we know what we need to use. We know how to get the energy we need to get. We know the technology that we need to use to get the types of energy that we need to use, because these things is basic human needs. Whereas though, and again, a personal belief of mine, we should all know how to build these things and learn how these things is used. That would advance society in such a way that we probably never seen in our lifetime or generations before us. Now, another energy source that is all over and always available is water. We got oceans, rivers, lakes, ponds, all types of shit. You know what I'm saying? Rain, all that. We don't really tap into the water as much as we could in a residential sense. And if you follow on what I'm talking about, this is like in a residential sense as well, like again, housing. We don't really necessarily tap into the water as much as we possibly could. So water turbines, pretty much having the technology to build our own ways to produce electricity through water, the movement and flow of water. This is another thing that, in my personal opinion, human beings should know how to use, because it's something that's, it's not a difficult concept, and it's a part of our necessities. Now, another thing it's always available, but not as much as in specific types of volumes, which is like wind. And so wind turbines, just like water turbines, pretty much could be used in a residential sense to actually have clean sources of energy. So I just went over 3 clean sources of energy, pretty much: solar, water, and air. And if you notice, all those is like kind of similar to the elements like sun, fire, water, and air, pretty much. Now, all this, if we combined all this with learning to live with less, as far as less consumption of things that we don't need, because then we could use those materials for building housing structures. We could learn how to not necessarily need as much space as we think we need to fulfill our residential lives. We wouldn't necessarily impact the planet as much as we normally do with the types of structures that we have currently and the types of energy that we use currently. So that's a whole reframing of the way that we as a society pretty much live in a residential personal lifestyle. So again, all these was about housing, and this was episode 2 of the What If series. What if we created sustainable housing all over the planet, pretty much? It's Sirius V, Von and Sirius Star, coming to you live from the airwaves. I will be back like I never left.